The nurse, Kechi Okoro, froze mid-step when she looked at the computer screen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. The newborn's name, which should have been printed clearly under admission records, was gone, completely erased. Not a glitch, not a system error. Someone had deliberately removed it. She looked down at the infant in her arms, the small life wailing quietly, skin dark and soft, tiny fists curling against her chest. Chimamanda Adebayo, the baby, was real, breathing, alive. And yet, according to the hospital records, she did not exist. Kechi Okoro's heart pounded. Hospitals did not lose delivery records. Not for private wings. Not for cash-paying clients. Not in a facility like Lagos Central Private Hospital. The thought clawed at her chest. Someone was watching. Someone who could make a life disappear with a keystroke. On the bed, Funk Adebayo lay motionless, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Her eyes were wide and alert, scanning the corners, the door, and the floor, as though expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. Sweat clung to her forehead and temples. She had been told safety was temporary. She had been told silence was required. She had been told to trust no one. Kechi Okoro gently adjusted Chimamanda Adebayo in her arms, feeling the baby's tiny heartbeat against her palm. She whispered quietly, trying to calm both the child and herself. "Everything is fine. You're safe. For now." Funk Adebayo flinched at the sound, pressing her lips to Chimamanda Adebayo's head, rocking her slightly. Her voice was a fragile whisper. "Are they going to take her?" Kechi Okoro hesitated, then shook her head. "Not tonight." Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Soft, controlled, too deliberate for hospital staff on rounds. Kechi Okoro's gaze snapped to the door. The handle didn't move, but the instinctual fear prickled at the back of her neck. A man stepped in, tall, sharply dressed in a dark suit that seemed out of place in the sterile white hallway. Olumide Okoro. His polished leather shoes made no sound on the tile floor. His hands were clasped behind his back. Calm, controlled, observing. "Good evening," he said politely, voice smooth but carrying an undercurrent that made the air heavy. "I hope everything went smoothly." Kechi Okoro forced a professional nod. "Yes, the delivery was successful." "Good," he said, stepping closer, eyes flicking to Chimamanda Adebayo. "And the records?" The question landed softly but with weight, a warning wrapped in civility. Kechi Okoro felt her stomach twist. She answered carefully, neutral. "There seems to be a technical issue. I'm reviewing it now." Olumide Okoro nodded. "Please do. Some matters require discretion." Funk Adebayo's body tensed, gripping Chimamanda Adebayo tightly. Her eyes darted to the corners, scanning for cameras, security personnel, anyone who might interfere. Her jaw clenched. "I was told the baby would be registered," she said softly. Olumide Okoro's eyes narrowed, his smile fading into something colder. "We said you would be taken care of." Kechi Okoro's stomach dropped. She had worked long enough in Lagos' private hospital system to recognize that tone. Final. Absolute. Dangerous. She cleared her throat. "Until the system updates, the child cannot be discharged." Olumide Okoro's glance flicked to her, sharp and assessing. "Of course," he said, his voice smooth again, not harsh but cutting. "We wouldn't want any mistakes." He moved toward the door, pulling a sleek phone from his pocket. "I'll inform her that there's been a delay." Her. The pronoun hung in the air like smoke. Kechi Okoro didn't ask who he meant. Everyone in the hospital knew. The billionaire did not come herself. She never did. Her presence arrived before her, erasing problems, silencing staff, bending reality to her will. Olumide Okoro paused at the doorway, looking back once more. "Please remember," he said, "some records are better left empty." Then he left. The door clicked shut. Silence pressed down heavier than any scream could. Funk Adebayo hugged Chimamanda Adebayo tighter, rocking slightly, tears slipping down her cheeks. The baby's whimper was soft but insistent, a tiny sound that refused to be ignored. Kechi Okoro stared at the blank space on the screen. She could see her own reflection in the glass, a pale figure overwhelmed by fear. Her mind raced. Access logs, cameras, security codes. Whoever erased that record was meticulous. Someone in power. Someone untouchable. She glanced at Funk Adebayo again. The mother's trembling hands, the way she had scanned the room repeatedly, her shallow breaths, all signaled terror deeper than normal post-labor exhaustion. She had learned fear well, trained it to survive. and fear had not failed her yet. Nkechi Okoro leaned closer. I need to know everything, she whispered. Has anyone spoken to you since the delivery? Funk Adedeo's eyes filled with shame and terror. She shook her head. The nurse nodded. That answer confirmed what she already suspected. Someone powerful was tracking the birth, waiting to see how the humans involved would react. Chimamanda Adedeo squirmed, tiny hands flailing, demanding attention. Nkechi Okoro smoothed the child's skin, whispered reassurances she barely believed herself. Time stretched, each second a drumbeat of tension. The faint hum of fluorescent lights, distant monitor beeps, and muted footsteps in the hall became a symphony of dread. Memories of past incidents flickered through Nkechi Okoro's mind. Disappearances, hushed threats, staff transfers that were never explained. The fear that had always hovered at the edges of Lagos' private medical world now pressed into her chest fully. She adjusted her gloves, cleared her throat. Everything must look normal, she reminded herself. Panic would only bring attention. Another sound. The elevator dinged faintly, somewhere down the hall. The timing was deliberate. Nkechi Okoro knew it without needing to see. Whoever was watching controlled the environment perfectly, measured, patient, calculating. Funk Adedeo whispered again. Are they watching us now? Nkechi Okoro shook her head. Not right now, but later. The baby cried louder, a piercing wail that demanded recognition. It was impossible to ignore, impossible to silence. Nkechi Okoro pressed the child closer to Funk Adedeo, feeling the mother's heartbeat against her own palm. Somewhere beyond these walls, someone was waiting. Someone powerful. Someone who had made a name disappear with a keystroke and would not hesitate to erase lives if crossed. Nkechi Okoro straightened, a cold determination settling in. She would not let Chimamanda Adedeo vanish. Not tonight. Funk Adedeo's hands clenched the blanket, tears falling freely now. Chimamanda Adedeo's cries echoed against the sterile white walls. Outside, the hospital remained silent. Too silent. The night had only begun. And whatever had been erased on the screen, whatever dangerous forces lurked beyond the door, were only the first chapter of what was about to unfold. The night in Lagos Central Private Hospital was unervingly still, a silence so complete it pressed against the walls, the monitors, the very air. Nkechi Okoro adjusted the blanket around Chimamanda Adedeo and glanced at Funk Adedeo, whose eyes had grown wide and haunted after Oluyemide Okoro's visit. Every muscle in Funk Adedeo's body was taut, ready to spring, yet paralyzed by fear. The baby whimpered again, tiny fists scrabbling against her chest. Funk Adedeo rocked her gently, trying to soothe the fragile life, but her own pulse thundered like a drum in her ears. Nkechi Okoro moved to the bedside computer, fingers trembling as she reopened the hospital's secure monitoring system. She scanned every feed, every camera in the private wing. Nothing. All angles were empty, except the hallway outside, the hallway that had just swallowed Oluyemide Okoro's presence. The nurse's chest tightened. The man had left the room, but he hadn't left the hospital. He couldn't have. No one moved like that without being followed, without making the place bend to their will. Whoever he worked for had eyes everywhere. She turned back to Funk Adedeo. You need to stay calm, Nkechi Okoro said, voice low but firm. Do not panic. Do not make a sound that could attract attention. Funk Adedeo's hands trembled as she clutched Chimamanda Adedeo closer. I can't, she whispered. I can't breathe knowing someone could just take her. Nkechi Okoro nodded. I know. I feel it too. But panicking now will only make it easier for them. The baby's cries grew louder, piercing the silence, demanding acknowledgement. Each wail was a drumbeat of dread that seemed to echo through the hallways. The monitors beeped, the fluorescent lights hummed, but outside the private wing, the rest of the hospital was asleep. Or pretending to be. Nkechi Okoro pulled up the access logs, her eyes scanning for anything unusual. The elevator had registered Oluyemide Okoro's use, but after that, all entries were normal, all routine. Yet the knowledge that someone had deliberately erased Chimamanda Adedeo's record lingered like a shadow. The nurse knew the pattern. High-profile clients, secret births, sudden disappearances. She had heard whispers in the staff room, rumors of babies vanishing, of paperwork disappearing, of mothers coerced into silence. Every time, the result was the same. No evidence left behind, no trace, no recourse. Funk Adedeo shifted, pressing Chimamanda Adedeo against her chest. What if they come back? She whispered. They will, Nkechi Okoro said, forcing a calm she didn't entirely feel. But we're not leaving this room. Not until we know exactly what's happening. A sudden noise made both women jump. The faint squeak of shoes against tile, echoing from the far end of the hallway. The timing was deliberate. Someone was moving carefully, purposefully, making sure they were seen only in glimpses. Nkechi Okoro's pulse spiked. She motioned to Funk Adedeo to stay low on the bed, blankets pulled over her shoulders. Every instinct screamed that this was the moment to act cautiously, to become invisible. The door handle rattled softly. Nkechi Okoro's eyes locked on it. No one entered, but the movement was enough. Someone was testing the room, gauging reactions, measuring fear. Chimamanda Adedeo's cries intensified, high and piercing. Funk Adedeo's hands shook as she tried to hush her, rocking her faster, pressing her face against the baby's soft head. The tiny life seemed aware of the tension, of the invisible threat looming outside the walls. Nkechi Okoro moved to the intercom. She keyed in the override, scanning the monitors as she whispered into the device. Security. Check the private wing. Now. Nothing. Silence. Her stomach twisted. Security had been compromised. Someone with access had already overridden the alerts, ensured that the cameras, the logs, and the staff could not intervene. The realization sank in like a stone. They were on their own. Completely. Outside, the hallway remained empty, or so it seemed. A shadow flickered near the corner, a movement too subtle for anyone untrained to notice. But Nkechi Okoro noticed. Every detail mattered. Every movement counted. She had seen enough in the hospital's history to know that shadows could hide watchers, hidden cameras, even people lying in wait. Funk Adedeo whispered again. What do we do now? Nkechi Okoro clenched her jaw. We wait, and we watch, and we protect Chimamanda Adedeo. At any cost. The baby cried again, and this time the sound carried down the hall, bouncing off walls, reaching ears unseen. The tension thickened. Whoever was outside would have heard it. Whoever had erased the records would have known that the baby was alive, that Funk Adedeo was awake, that Nkechi Okoro was aware. Minutes stretched. The women sat in silence. Only the baby's soft whimpers and the distant hum of the hospital filling the air. Nkechi Okoro moved closer to Funk Adedeo, resting a hand on her shoulder. We need to stay calm, she said again. If they notice fear, they can use it against us. Funk Adedeo nodded, but her eyes betrayed her terror. She pressed Chimamanda Adedeo's tiny body to her chest, rocking her as if the act itself could shield them from the invisible threat. Another sound, this one closer. A soft click, followed by a muted thud. Someone was in the hallway again, moving with purpose. Nkechi Okoro's heart raced. She had a choice. Confront the intruder or stay hidden. Both options carried immense risk. She pulled up the intercom again, her fingers hovering above the call button. Should she alert security? Or should she wait for the intruder to make the first move? A cold thought ran through her mind. What if security had already been compromised? What if the billionaire herself had eyes in every corner? Chimamanda Adedeo whimpered, breaking her train of thought. The sound was raw, demanding, impossible to ignore. Funk Adedeo clutched her tighter, rocking her, whispering words of comfort she barely believed. Time moved differently in that room. Seconds stretched, minutes felt like hours. Each creak of the floorboards, each distant footstep, each hum of fluorescent light became amplified, magnified, a threat in itself. Nkechi Okoro glanced at the monitors again. Nothing unusual. And yet, she knew better. The danger was real. It was close. And it was watching. Then, a soft knock at the door. Not a forceful knock, but deliberate, precise. Someone outside wanted to test reactions. They knew the room contained life. They knew someone was awake. They were measuring fear. Nkechi Okoro stiffened. Funk Adedeo's eyes widened. Chimamanda Adedeo cried again, piercing and sharp. The nurse whispered, "Stay calm. Don't respond. Let them make the first move." And somewhere, beyond the walls, in the shadows of the hospital, the eyes watching them shifted, calculating, waiting. The night had only begun. And this was only the first test. The hallway outside the private wing of Lagos Central Private Hospital remained silent, almost unnaturally so, yet Nkechi Okoro could feel the weight of unseen eyes pressing through the walls. Every shadow seemed to flicker, every reflection in the polished floor revealing movement that wasn't there. The hum of the fluorescent lights above was suddenly deafening. Funk Adedayo clutched Chimamanda Adedayo to her chest, her knuckles white. She had not slept properly in weeks. Knowing the billionaire's network of watchers was far-reaching, relentless, and invisible. Nkechi Okoro had seen the fear that settled in mothers before, most feared for their newborns. Funk Adedayo's fear was different. It was sharp, instinctive, a sense that the world itself had tilted into danger. Nkechi Okoro adjusted Chimamanda Adedayo in her arms and scanned the room again. The monitors still showed nothing unusual, but she knew better. No one erased records like this without surveillance already in place. No one moved quietly in this hospital without the backing of influence so vast that normal protocols were meaningless. A faint whisper reached them, a sound so soft it could have been the hospital's ventilation. Funk Adedayo flinched, pressing Chimamanda Adedayo closer. Nkechi Okoro froze, listening. The whisper repeated, just once, like a syllable carried on air, Chimamanda. Her stomach dropped. The baby's name spoken outside this room meant someone knew she was here, knew she was alive, and had the ability to locate her at any moment. The implications were chilling. Funk Adedayo's eyes darted around, frantic. Who's there? She whispered, voice quivering. Nkechi Okoro shook her head slightly. Do not respond. Do not let them know you are listening. Whoever it is testing you. Chimamanda Adedayo stirred in her mother's arms, tiny fists flailing, sensing the tension, reacting to the fear that saturated the air. The infant's cries became more insistent, high and demanding, as if aware that danger was approaching. Nkechi Okoro moved toward the door, careful, deliberate. She checked the security camera monitors again. Nothing, but the whisper had come from somewhere. That much she could feel. Funk Adedayo's breathing quickened. I can't do this, she said, pressing her face into Chimamanda Adedayo's hair. What if they take her? Nkechi Okoro crouched beside her. You must stay calm, she whispered. If they sense panic, they will act. We cannot let them know fear controls us. The whisper came again, this time slightly louder. Chimamanda Adedayo. The hairs on Nkechi Okoro's neck stood on end. Whoever was out there, they were close. Too close. Suddenly, a shadow shifted behind the semi-transparent curtain, separating the private wing from the hallway. Nkechi Okoro froze. Funk Adedayo clutched Chimamanda Adedayo tighter, rocking her instinctively. Nkechi Okoro inched forward, hand hovering over the light switch. The faint outline of a figure appeared. A man, dressed in black, movement controlled, careful. Not Olumide Okoro, not the billionaire herself. Someone else. Someone who had been sent to test the defenses. The nurse swallowed, forcing her pulse to slow. She had faced threats before, but never this precise, never this deliberate. Every instinct screamed, danger, immediate, real. The figure moved, just enough to be seen, then vanished behind the curtain again. Funk Adedayo's voice shook. They're going to take her, she whispered. Nkechi Okoro's eyes narrowed. Not while I am here. She scanned the room for anything that could be used for defense, anything that could help them escape if the situation escalated. The private wing was sterile, minimal, but the baby was their priority. Chimamanda Adedayo's life was non-negotiable. A faint beep from the monitor caught her attention. Heart rate normal. Temperature stable. Breathing steady. For now. Then came a second, more insistent whisper, carried through the walls like a message. Funk Adedayo. Chimamanda Adedayo. Nkechi Okoro froze. It was deliberate. Personal. They knew names. They had access. They were tracking, waiting, calculating. Funk Adedayo whimpered. How do we stop them? The nurse shook her head. We don't. We survive until they make a mistake. That is all we can do. Chimamanda Adedayo's cry suddenly intensified, high-pitched, demanding. It echoed through the room, bouncing off walls, vibrating through the floor. Whoever was outside would have heard it. Whoever had erased the record would know the baby was alive. The lights flickered. A shadow moved across the ceiling. Nkechi Okoro pressed herself against the wall, eyes fixed on the door. Another soft footstep echoed from the hall. Then a note slipped under the door. Small, white, precise. Leave the child, or face consequences you cannot imagine. Funk Adedayo gasped, clutching Chimamanda Adedayo, tears spilling freely. Nkechi Okoro picked up the note, reading it carefully. Every word radiated authority, danger, and control. Whoever had sent it had power far beyond anything she had encountered in her career. The nurse's mind raced. Every exit, every hallway, every security measure. Compromised. If they left the room, they were exposed. If they stayed, they were trapped. Another whisper came, closer this time. Chimamanda Adebayo. Nkechi Okoro's pulse slammed. The figure was closer than ever. The intruder had found a way inside the perimeter, invisible, silent. Funk Adebayo sobbed quietly. How are we supposed to protect her? Nkechi Okoro forced herself to focus. Every movement, every sound, every shadow mattered. The intruder was testing them, waiting for a reaction. Chimamanda Adebayo cried again, high and insistent, tiny fists flailing. Funk Adebayo rocked her, whispering words of reassurance, though her own fear threatened to swallow her. Nkechi Okoro moved silently to the curtain, peering just enough to see the hallway beyond. Empty, but she knew better. Every empty space was a potential threat, every shadow a watcher. Time stretched. Minutes became hours in the tension-filled room. Every whisper, every creak, every flicker of the fluorescent lights amplified the sense of danger. Then, suddenly, a sound. Not a footstep, not a whisper. A deliberate knock on the glass of the private wing. Nkechi Okoro stiffened. Funk Adebayo froze, holding Chimamanda Adebayo tighter. The message was clear. They were being watched. Every reaction, every heartbeat, every fear catalogued. The night had only begun, and the danger was closing in. The private wing of Lagos Central Private Hospital had never felt so oppressive. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Every corner, every reflection, seemed alive. Nkechi Okoro held Chimamanda Adebayo carefully, moving slowly across the room to block any line of sight to the door. Funk Adebayo followed, gripping the baby as if her arms alone could shield her from the unseen threat. The note had been left hours ago. The words still burned in Funk Adebayo's mind. Leave the child, or face consequences you cannot imagine. She had read them a dozen times, each repetition tightening the grip of fear in her chest. Nkechi Okoro's mind raced. Every exit, every security measure, every camera in the private wing had been compromised. Whoever had sent the note knew exactly who they were, where they were, and what they were capable of. Then the door clicked. Soft, deliberate. Nkechi Okoro froze, instinct screaming. Whoever it was, they didn't need to enter to dominate the room. Presence alone was enough. The figure stepped through the doorway. Tall, composed, dressed in a sharply tailored black suit. The shoes made no sound on the polished floor. Oluyemide Okoro, the man who had erased the record, who had delivered the warning, and who had ensured the baby's existence could be questioned at any moment. Funk Adebayo pressed Chimamanda Adebayo closer to her chest, rocking her gently. Her knuckles were white. She dared not breathe too loudly. Oluyemide Okoro's gaze swept the room like a predator inspecting prey. He paused, noting every detail. The way Funk Adebayo clutched her child, the tension in Nkechi Okoro's shoulders, the faint rise and fall of Chimamanda Adebayo's chest. He stepped closer, hands clasped behind his back. "We need to talk," he said, voice calm but commanding. Nkechi Okoro's pulse spiked. "Speak," he continued, "or I will leave it to someone else to make decisions for you." Funk Adebayo's eyes widened. "Decisions?" she whispered. Nkechi Okoro tightened her grip on Chimamanda Adebayo. "Not a word," she mouthed. "Let him speak." Oluyemide Okoro's eyes fixed on Funk Adebayo. "You delivered the child successfully. Congratulations. But there is a complication." Funk Adebayo's lips trembled. "What kind of complication?" He tilted his head slightly. "A complication that must be resolved immediately. The records must reflect nothing. Your child's birth must remain invisible." Chimamanda Adebayo stirred in Funk Adebayo's arms, tiny fists flailing. The infant's cries cut through the tension, desperate and demanding. Funk Adebayo pressed her lips to Chimamanda Adebayo's head, whispering, "It's okay, Chimamanda Adebayo. Mommy is here. Mommy will protect you." Nkechi Okoro's mind raced. Every second of hesitation could mean someone breaking into the room. Every sound could alert the watchers outside. Oluyemide Okoro's gaze shifted to her. "Nurse Nkechi Okoro," he said softly, "your role is to ensure both survive the night. Protect the child. Protect the mother. Failure is not an option." Nkechi Okoro swallowed hard. She knew what he meant. There was no room for error. Mistakes were not forgiven. Mistakes were erased. The billionaire had already decided their fates. A sudden movement caught Funk Adebayo's eye. A shadow flickered near the far corner of the room. Not human, or at least not entirely visible. Alyamide Okoro smiled faintly. The child is already drawing attention, he said. They are watching. Every movement, every breath. Funk Adedeo's stomach twisted. Watching? Who? Alyamide Okoro's eyes glinted. There are many who benefit from the child's disappearance. The world outside this room is not your world. You belong here, temporarily, under protection. For now. Nkechi Okoro tightened her grip on Chimamanda Adedeo. Temporarily meant fragile. Temporarily meant danger. Temporarily meant survival was measured in minutes, not hours. Funk Adedeo whispered, How long? How long can we stay safe? Alyamide Okoro's smile vanished. That depends entirely on you. Then, the billionaire's presence made itself known. A soft, deliberate knock on the door, elegant but commanding. Alyamide Okoro's eyes softened slightly, a hint of obedience in his posture. The knock echoed through the sterile room. It was a presence felt more than heard. Funk Adedeo's breath caught. The billionaire. She didn't need to see her face to know. The energy, the authority, the unyielding control. Every instinct in Funk Adedeo's body screamed recognition. Nkechi Okoro's hands were steady, but her mind raced. They were in the room. The person capable of erasing records, of commanding silence, of bending reality itself, was here. The door opened slowly. A tall woman entered, impeccably dressed, bearing the aura of power. She glanced at Chimamanda Adedeo, then at Funk Adedeo. Your child, she said softly, almost a whisper. Precious. Funk Adedeo's knees threatened to buckle. She held Chimamanda Adedeo closer. Please, please, do not take her, she whispered, voice trembling. The billionaire smiled faintly, a mixture of amusement and cold calculation. That is not the plan. Not yet. But she must be managed carefully. She has potential. Nkechi Okoro stepped forward. How do we protect her? She asked. The billionaire's eyes locked onto her. You follow instructions. You stay silent. You survive. That is all. The air in the room grew heavier. Funk Adedeo's heart raced. She had never felt so small, so exposed, and yet so alive. Chimamanda Adedeo slept against her chest, unaware of the danger, blissfully ignorant of the forces converging around her. The billionaire turned, leaving a faint perfume in her wake, a warning that lingered. Alyamide Okoro closed the door behind her, casting one final glance at the mother and nurse. Remember, he said, failure is not an option. And then, silence. Nkechi Okoro exhaled slowly. The first major test had begun. The child was alive, yes, but now every movement, every sound, every breath mattered. Funk Adedeo pressed Chimamanda Adedeo closer, rocking her gently. She whispered words she hoped were enough. You are safe, Chimamanda Adedeo. Mommy will not let anyone take you. But deep down, both women knew the truth. The billionaire's shadow would not leave them. The watchers outside would continue to calculate. Every second would count. The night stretched endlessly, a living, breathing threat that hung over them like a storm about to break. And in the quiet moments, when the fluorescent lights hummed and the monitors beeped, one thought dominated both minds. Survival had only just begun. The first attempt didn't come with a warning. It snuck in quietly, like a shadow in the night. The private wing of Lagos Central Private Hospital was dim, with most of the lights switched to night mode, casting a soft glow that felt both comforting and eerie. The beeping of monitors had slowed, creating a rhythmic, steady sound that matched the fragile breathing of Chimamanda Adedeo, the tiny baby fighting for her life. Funk Adedeo sat upright on the bed, refusing to sleep, her eyes glued to the door as if it held the answers to all her fears. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her body, but the gnawing fear kept her wide awake. She was a mother on high alert, every instinct screaming for her to protect her child. Nurse Nkechi Okoro stood near the window, arms folded, listening intently. Not just hearing, but truly listening. Hospitals have their own soundtrack, right? The hum of generators, the distant echo of footsteps, and the soft wheeze of air vents blending into a background noise that most people tune out. But Nkechi knew these sounds intimately, and she could tell when something felt off. And tonight, something felt off. Do you hear that? Funk whispered, her voice barely above a breath, but it carried a weight of dread. Nkechi nodded slowly, her senses sharpening. Footsteps, but not the hurried, chaotic steps of hospital staff. These were slow, measured, too controlled, the kind of steps that sent chills down her spine. Chimamanda stirred, releasing a soft whimper, and Funk instinctively pulled her closer, rocking gently, pressing her cheek against the baby's head. Her heart began to pound so loudly that she felt sure whoever was outside could hear it. The room felt too small, too vulnerable, and she could sense the danger creeping closer. The footsteps stopped, right outside the door. Nkechi moved without a word, her expression serious. She quietly locked the inner bolt, then reached under the counter and pulled out a metal instrument tray. It wasn't a weapon, but it was heavy, solid, better than nothing in this tense moment. Funk's eyes widened. "Someone is there," she whispered, fear tightening her throat. Before Nkechi could respond, the door handle turned. Once, twice, slowly. Each turn felt like a countdown, building tension in the air. The handle stopped, and silence enveloped them, but it was a charged silence, heavy with anticipation. Then came a new sound, a soft electronic beep. Nkechi's blood ran cold. Someone was scanning the lock. "This is it," Funk whispered, her voice breaking. "They're coming for Chimamanda Adebayo." Nkechi shook her head sharply, her tone firm. "Do not panic. Panic makes mistakes." The lock clicked. The outer door opened. The inner bolt held, but only just. A shadow appeared through the frosted glass. Tall, broad, male, not Olumide Okoro. This one moved differently, with a predatory grace that set off alarm bells in both women's minds. He pushed against the door. Once, harder the second time. The bolt groaned, and Funk let out a small cry, instinctively curling around Chimamanda, shielding her with her own body. "Get behind the bed," Nkechi whispered urgently, her voice low but commanding. The third push came harder. The bolt snapped. The door flew open. The man stepped inside, wearing hospital scrubs, but they were too clean, too perfect. His face was partially covered with a mask, but his eyes were cold and focused. He didn't hesitate or look around. His gaze was locked straight on Chimamanda. Funk screamed, a raw, desperate sound that echoed through the room. The man lunged forward. Nkechi swung the metal tray with everything she had. It connected with his shoulder. He grunted, staggering back, but not falling. He was fast, too fast. He recovered instantly and reached again. Funk, in a burst of adrenaline, grabbed the bedside lamp and smashed it against the wall. Glass shattered, the sound ringing out like a warning bell down the corridor. Alarms began to beep faintly, but not loudly enough to drown out the chaos. The man cursed under his breath, his patience wearing thin. "Give me the child," he said calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. "This doesn't have to be painful." Nkechi stepped between him and the bed, breathing hard, her resolve solid. "You will not touch Chimamanda Adebayo." The man tilted his head, assessing her, as if she were a puzzle he couldn't quite figure out. "You're not supposed to resist," he said, his voice smooth, almost taunting. He moved again, but this time, Nkechi kicked the instrument card into his legs. He stumbled, losing balance for just a second. It was enough. Funk bolted, clutching Chimamanda tightly and running into the bathroom, slamming the door behind her and locking it. She pressed her back against the door, sliding down to the floor, sobbing silently as she covered Chimamanda's mouth to muffle her cries. Outside, chaos erupted. The man shoved the bed aside, fury flashing in his eyes. Nkechi stood her ground, chest heaving, hands shaking but determined. "You're making this worse," the man snapped, frustration evident in his voice. "No," Nkechi shot back. "You already did." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Real footsteps this time. Multiple voices. The man froze, glancing at the bathroom door, then at the corridor. He made a decision. Without another word, he turned and ran. By the time hospital security burst in, weapons drawn, the room was wrecked. Glass everywhere. Bed overturned. Monitors dangling like broken toys. Funk emerged slowly from the bathroom. Chimamanda still clutched tightly to her chest, shaking but unharmed. Relief washed over her, but it was mixed with the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Nkechi sank into a chair, hands trembling violently now that the danger had passed. The adrenaline crash hit her hard, leaving her feeling drained and vulnerable. Security searched the wing, but they found nothing. No intruder, no records, no footage, just like before. It was as if the man had vanished into thin air. A senior doctor arrived, his face pale and drawn. "This never happened," he said quietly, almost pleading. "Do you understand?" Funk stared at him, disbelief etched across her features. "No," she said firmly. "It happened. Someone tried to take my child." The doctor swallowed hard, his eyes darting away from hers. "You need to rest." As the room settled into uneasy silence, one truth became terrifyingly clear to both women. This was not surveillance anymore. This was escalation. Someone had crossed the line, and Chimamanda Adebayo had just survived the first attempt. But what would happen next? What would it take to keep her safe? Funk's mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Morning did not bring relief. Instead, it exposed the terrifying depth of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. Dawn crept into Lagos Central Private Hospital slowly, with pale light slipping through the blinds of the private wing like a timid visitor, hesitant to intrude. Funk Adebayo had not slept a wink. Her eyes burned and were swollen from the tears she'd held back all night, and her arms ached from gripping her baby, Chimamanda Adebayo, tightly, as if she could shield her from the world's horrors. Chimamanda slept fitfully, her tiny chest rising and falling, blissfully unaware that her life had almost been stolen from her just hours earlier. It was a heavy burden for a mother to bear, knowing how close they had come to losing everything. Across the room, Nurse Nkechi Okoro sat opposite the bed, her uniform wrinkled and her hands still shaking slightly. The adrenaline from the previous night had faded, leaving behind a cold, hollow fear that settled in her stomach like a stone. Someone had tried to take the baby, not just threaten or observe, but actually take her. The thought made her stomach churn. And the worst part? It wasn't just how close it had been. It was how easily the man had gotten in. It felt like a nightmare that she couldn't wake up from. A soft knock came at the door, breaking the tense silence that had wrapped around them like a heavy blanket. Nkechi stood up, positioning herself protectively between the door and Funk. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice steady but laced with tension. "Hospital administration," a male voice replied, calm and polite. Nkechi opened the door just enough to see two men standing outside. They both wore ID badges and had professional smiles plastered on their faces. But something about their ordinary appearance sent a shiver down her spine. They stepped inside without waiting for permission, as if they owned the place. The older man cleared his throat, his demeanor all too casual. "I'm Dr. Hassan Bello. This is Mr. Tund A. Kinwale from hospital management." Funk's stomach twisted at the sight of them. Hospital management hadn't shown up last night, but here they were now, like vultures circling their prey. Dr. Hassan glanced around the damaged room, taking in the broken glass, the overturned bed, and the repaired lock. "A regrettable incident," he said lightly, as if they were discussing a minor inconvenience rather than a near kidnapping. "No," Funk said sharply, her voice rising. "Someone tried to kidnap my child." Mr. Tund A. Kinwale smiled thinly, his eyes cold. "There is no evidence of that." Nkechi felt a surge of rage. There was an intruder. Dr. Hassan nodded slowly, as if he were humoring a child. "Stress can cause vivid misinterpretations." Funk let out a short, bitter laugh. "So the broken door imagined itself?" Mr. Tund A. Kinwale's smile faded, replaced by a serious expression. "What matters now," he said, "is cooperation." That word hung in the air like a blade, sharp and threatening. Nkechi's pulse quickened. "Cooperation with what?" "With procedures," Dr. Hassan replied smoothly. "For your safety." "For Chimamanda Adebayo's safety," Mr. Tund A. Kinwale added, as if that would make it any better. Funk instinctively pulled her baby closer, her heart racing. "No one is taking her anywhere," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. The two men exchanged a glance, a silent communication that sent a chill down her spine. Then Dr. Hassan spoke quietly, his tone chilling. "The private wing is no longer secure." Nkechi's heart sank. "You mean you failed to secure it?" "We mean," Mr. Tund A. Kinwale said smoothly, "that Chimamanda Adebayo must be moved to another facility." Dr. Hassan continued, his expression unyielding. "A safer one." "Which facility?" Nkechi demanded, her eyes narrowing. "That information is classified." And just like that, everything clicked into place for Funk. She felt it deep in her bones, a gut instinct that screamed at her. "This is a handover," she said, her voice low but fierce. The men said nothing, their expressions betraying nothing. Chimamanda stirred, sensing the tension in the room. Funk began rocking her gently, whispering urgently, "It's okay. Mommy is here. Mommy is not letting them take you." Mr. Tund A. Kinwale sighed, his patience wearing thin. "Funk Adedayo, you are not in control here." Nkechi stepped forward, her voice steady and strong. "You will leave." Dr. Hassan's expression hardened, the calm facade cracking. "Refusal will have consequences." And compliance already had consequences. Nkechi snapped back, her anger boiling over. "Someone entered this room last night because someone inside this hospital opened the door." Mr. Tund A. Kinwale adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous habit. "You are both very emotional. And you are both lying," Funk said, her voice shaking but firm. She looked around the room, taking in the walls, the ceiling, the corners. "They're listening, aren't they?" Dr. Hassan didn't deny it, and that was all the confirmation she needed. And into something else, resolve. "You're not moving, my child," she said slowly, each word deliberate. "Not alive, not breathing." Mr. Tund A. Kinwale's jaw tightened, his irritation clear. "You're making a mistake." "Then write it down," Funk replied, her voice steady. "Put it in your erased records." Nkechi reached for the call button, pressing it repeatedly, but nothing happened. They were powerless. Mr. Tund A. Kinwale stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "Last chance." Before anyone could respond, Chimamanda began to cry. The sound cut through the room like an alarm, piercing the tense atmosphere. Footsteps echoed outside, fast and urgent. Dr. Hassan's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of panic crossing his face. Security burst in, not hospital security. The men froze, caught off guard. A woman's voice came from the hallway, calm and controlled, yet familiar. "That will be enough." The billionaire stepped into view, and the room went silent. She looked at Chimamanda, then at Funk, her expression unreadable. "Your child attracts chaos," she said calmly. "That must be managed." Funk felt her knees weaken, but she didn't bow. She didn't beg. "You sent someone last night," she said, her voice steady despite the fear churning inside her. The billionaire didn't deny it. Nkechi's blood ran cold. "So it was you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," the billionaire answered, "and no." Funk swallowed hard, her heart racing. "You're not taking her." The billionaire tilted her head, a slight smirk playing on her lips. "I haven't decided yet." That was worse than a direct refusal. She gestured slightly, and the armed men shifted, their eyes narrowing as they focused on Funk and Nkechi. "This hospital is compromised," the billionaire said, her tone flat. "You cannot stay." "And if we refuse?" Funk challenged, her voice rising. The billionaire's eyes were calm, almost bored. "Then the next attempt will not fail." Silence crushed the room, heavy with dread. Chimamanda cried harder, her tiny body racked with sobs. Funk hugged her tightly, tears streaming freely now, a mix of fear and frustration. Nkechi stepped closer to Funk, lowering her voice. "If we stay, they will take her by force." Funk nodded slowly, understanding dawning on her. This was no longer about hiding. It was about escaping. "I'll go," Funk said quietly, determination filling her voice. "But not with you." The billionaire smiled faintly, as if she found this amusing. "That," she said, "is not how this works." Funk met her gaze, fear blazing in her eyes, but unbroken. "Watch me." The billionaire studied her for a long moment, and then she laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down Funk's spine. Funk Adedayo did not know the billionaire woman's name yet, but she could feel her presence everywhere. In the cameras, in the guards, in the silence that followed every closed door. Powerful people did not need to shout. They waited. And somewhere in Lagos, a billionaire named Adarinsula Balogun had already decided what Chimamanda Adedayo would become. This chapter is where Funk Adedayo realizes the truth. The hospital was never meant to save her child. It was meant to hold her until fear did the work. Morning arrived without relief. Funk Adedayo watched sunlight creep across the hospital floor, slow and indifferent, as Chimamanda Adedayo slept against her chest. The baby's breathing was steady now, medically stable, declared safe. But safety had become a meaningless word, because the pressure had not left. It had grown heavier. Nurse Nkechi Okoro noticed it too. The nurses had changed. The guards outside the room were not hospital security anymore. Their posture was different. Their eyes watched longer than necessary. They did not speak unless spoken to. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi arrived later than usual. His face carried exhaustion and something worse. Recognition. Funk Adedayo knew before he spoke that the truth had finally caught up with them. It has been approved, Dr. Samuel Adeyemi said quietly. Approved what? Funk Adedayo asked. The interest, he replied. The ownership question. Nkechi Okoro stiffened. Ownership of who? Dr. Samuel Adeyemi looked at Chimamanda Adedayo. Ownership of her. The room went still. Funk Adedayo felt anger rise, sharp and protective. She is my child. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi nodded. Yes, but not to everyone. He lowered his voice further. The name has been confirmed. Funk Adedayo's heart pounded. Whose name? Dr. Samuel Adeyemi hesitated, then said it. Adarinsula Balogun. The name landed with weight. Nkechi Okoro exhaled slowly. The billionaire. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi nodded. One of the most powerful women in the country. She does not make requests. She claims outcomes. Funk Adedayo felt cold spread through her body. Why us? Dr. Samuel Adeyemi shook his head. It is not about you. Funk Adedayo looked down at Chimamanda Adedayo. Tiny fingers curled. Innocent. Unaware that her existence had triggered attention from someone who did not lose. The door opened without knocking. Oluyemide Okoro entered. He carried no file, no badge, no expression. So now you know the name, he said. Nkechi Okoro stepped forward instinctively. You sent someone into this room. Oluyemide Okoro nodded once. And you survived. That matters. Funk Adedayo's voice trembled with controlled fury. You almost killed my child. Oluyemide Okoro met her gaze. That was not the instruction. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi stiffened. Then why did it happen? Because fear accelerates decisions, Oluyemide Okoro replied. And hesitation is expensive. Funk Adedayo stood up slowly. Chimamanda Adedayo pressed to her chest. I am not handing my baby to Adarinsula Balogun. Oluyemide Okoro regarded her carefully. You already are. You just have not accepted it yet. Nkechi Okoro shook her head. You cannot take her legally. Oluyemide Okoro smiled faintly. This is not a legal process. He gestured around the room. Look around. The hospital, the staff, the silence. This is infrastructure. It belongs to her. Funk Adedayo felt her throat tighten. What does she want? Oluyemide Okoro answered without pause. Control. He stepped closer. Chimamanda Adedayo represents something unfinished, something unresolved. Adarinsula Balogun does not allow unresolved things to grow beyond her reach. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi spoke carefully. And if the mother refuses? Oluyemide Okoro's eyes darkened. Then the child is removed without cooperation. Nkechi Okoro whispered. When? Soon. Oluyemide Okoro replied. That depends on how difficult you choose to be. You should know something, he added. Last night was not an extraction attempt. Funk Adedayo's blood ran cold. Then what was it? A demonstration, Oluyemide Okoro said. To show you how easily the rules can bend. When he left, the room felt smaller. Nkechi Okoro spoke first. They are taking her. Yes, Dr. Samuel Adeyemi replied. Tonight or tomorrow. Then we leave before they decide for us, she said. Nkechi Okoro blinked. Leave how? Dr. Samuel Adeyemi hesitated. There is a service route. Underground access. It is not meant for patients. But it exists, Funk Adedayo said. That is enough. They did not waste time arguing. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi disabled what he could. Nkechi Okoro checked the hallway. Clear for now. Funk Adedayo moved quietly, every step deliberate. Chimamanda Adedayo warm against her chest. She whispered silent promises she was no longer sure she could keep. The service corridor smelled of oil and disinfectant. Lights flickered overhead. Every sound echoed. Halfway through, Funk Adedayo felt it again. They were being allowed to move. Alarms exploded before they reached the exit. Red lights flooded the underground parking area. Oluyemide Okoro stepped forward calmly, as if he had been waiting there all along. This is why fear is useful, he said. It convinces people to reveal themselves. Funk Adedayo backed away, heart racing, Chimamanda Adedayo crying now. You were never meant to escape, Oluyemide Okoro continued. You were meant to understand. Guards surrounded them. As they were escorted back toward the hospital elevators, Funk Adedayo finally understood what Adarinsula Balogun truly wanted. The elevator doors closed without sound. Funk Adedayo felt the motion before she felt the fear. Downward. Controlled. Final. Chimamanda Adedayo cried softly against her chest. exhausted from confusion rather than pain. The baby sensed danger the way animals sense storms, without understanding why. Nurse Nkechi Okoro stood rigid at Funk Adedeo's side. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi stared at the numbers above the door as they descended, knowing exactly where they were going. The doors opened into a restricted level of Lagos Central Private Hospital that most staff never saw. The lighting was warmer here, softer, designed to calm people who were about to lose something. Oluyemide Okoro waited. He did not look rushed. He never did. "You have been processed," he said calmly. That was the purpose of the exercise. Funk Adedeo's voice shook, but it did not break. "You let us try to escape." "Yes," Oluyemide Okoro replied. "Panic reveals loyalty. You did not abandon the child." They were led into a private suite that felt nothing like a hospital. No medical equipment. No monitors. Just furniture. Thick curtains. Soundproof walls. This was where decisions happened. Oluyemide Okoro observed them for a moment, then spoke. "You have reached the point where fear either destroys you or makes you useful." Funk Adedeo met his gaze. "I will never give you my child." Oluyemide Okoro nodded as if he expected that answer. "That is why you are still here." The door opened again. Adarinsula Balogun entered. She did not announce herself. She did not need to. The room adjusted to her presence the way rooms did around powerful people. Conversations died. Air seemed to still. "You ran," Adarinsula Balogun said softly. "That was predictable." Funk Adedeo's hands trembled. "You sent someone into my room." Adarinsula Balogun nodded. "I sent a message. It was delivered poorly." Nkechi Okoro stepped forward. "Your message nearly killed a baby." Adarinsula Balogun turned her eyes to Nkechi Okoro. "Control requires risk. Survival determines value." She returned her attention to Funk Adedeo. "Your daughter has value," Adarinsula Balogun continued. "Not because she is special, because she exists at the intersection of unfinished business." Funk Adedeo shook her head. "She is not a thing to be finished." "No," Adarinsula Balogun replied. "She is leverage." The word echoed. Funk Adedeo felt something crack inside her chest. "What do you want?" Adarinsula Balogun answered without hesitation. "Ownership without resistance." Silence followed. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi finally spoke. "You cannot just take a child." Adarinsula Balogun looked at him with mild curiosity. "I already have. She is standing in my building, protected by my people, breathing because I allow it." Funk Adedeo pulled Chimamanda Adedeo closer. "Then why am I still here?" "Because mothers complicate optics," Adarinsula Balogun said. "And because you have not yet chosen the easiest path." Nkechi Okoro clenched her fists. "Which is?" Adarinsula Balogun walked closer. "Not threatening. Not rushed. You disappear," she said. "New name. New location. No past. No future connections. You live quietly. Comfortably. Watched." Funk Adedeo swallowed. "And my child?" Adarinsula Balogun held her gaze. "She stays with me." The room spun. "No," Funk Adedeo whispered. Adarinsula Balogun tilted her head. "Or you keep her for now." Hope flared dangerously. "Under my conditions," Adarinsula Balogun added. "Complete obedience. No resistance." Nkechi Okoro stared at her. "You want a prisoner?" Adarinsula Balogun smiled faintly. "I want predictability." Dr. Samuel Adeyemi asked the question none of them wanted to voice. "And if she refuses both options?" Adarinsula Balogun's expression did not change. Then Chimamanda Adedeo is removed violently, and Funk Adedeo becomes an example. Funk Adedeo's knees weakened. 5 minutes, Adarinsula Balogun said. "Choose." She turned and left. Nkechi Okoro grabbed Funk Adedeo's arm. "We cannot trust her." "I know," Funk Adedeo whispered. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi spoke urgently. "This is not protection. It is delayed separation." Funk Adedeo looked down at Chimamanda Adedeo. "If I refuse," Funk Adedeo said slowly, "they take her tonight." "Yes," Dr. Samuel Adeyemi replied. "If I agree," Funk Adedeo continued, "they take her later." Nkechi Okoro shook her head. "Or never." "I will disappear," Funk Adedeo said. Nkechi Okoro froze. "No, but not alone," Funk Adedeo continued. "Nkechi Okoro comes with me." And Dr. Samuel Adeyemi. The door opened. Adarinsula Balogun returned, as if she had been listening. "You are negotiating," she said. "I am surviving," Funk Adedeo replied. Adarinsula Balogun studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Accepted. Temporarily." Oluyemide Okoro looked surprised. "That increases variables." "I enjoy variables," Adarinsula Balogun replied. "They reveal character." She stepped closer to Funk Adedayo. One mistake, she said quietly. One signal. One attempt. Her eyes dropped to Chimamanda Adedayo. And I in this arrangement. And as Funk Adedayo was escorted toward a waiting vehicle, she understood something with terrifying clarity. She had not saved her child. She had only delayed the moment fear would ask for everything. The road out of Lagos felt unreal. Funk Adedayo watched the city lights fade through the tinted window of the SUV, each kilometer pulling her further away from the life she knew and closer to something unnamed and suffocating. Chimamanda Adedayo slept against her chest, worn out by fear and motion, unaware that this drive marked the end of her freedom as much as her mother's. Nurse Nkechi Okoro sat beside Funk Adedayo, silent, alert, memorizing every turn even though she knew none of it mattered. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi rode in the front passenger seat, shoulders tense, hands folded like a man who understood he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The driver never spoke. They arrived just before dawn. The compound had no sign, no gate name, no visible address. High concrete walls swallowed the vehicle, and the entrance closed behind them with a finality that made Funk Adedayo's chest tighten. This was not a safe house. It was a holding space. Inside, the house was fully prepared. It was a holding space. Inside, the house was fully prepared. Clothes folded in drawers that already carried their new names. Baby supplies arranged neatly. Documents laid out on a table, waiting for signatures that would erase the past. Oluyemide Okoro stood inside as if he had been there all night. "Welcome to your absence," he said calmly. Funk Adedayo said nothing. She had learned that words were liabilities. "You are no longer Funk Adedayo," Oluyemide Okoro continued. "This identity ends here." He slid a file forward. "New names. New histories. No inconsistencies. If you forget who you were, you will live longer." Nkechi Okoro looked at the papers without touching them. "And Chimamanda Adedayo." Oluyemide Okoro's eyes flicked to the baby. "She remains Chimamanda Adedayo. For now." The phrase settled heavily in the room. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi spoke carefully. "How long is for now?" Oluyemide Okoro answered without emotion. "Until Adarinsula Balogun decides otherwise." The rules were explained quickly. No phones except the one provided. No unscheduled movement. No contact with outsiders. No emotional displays near cameras. No attempts to document or record anything. Surveillance was constant. Funk Adedayo noticed the cameras almost immediately. Chimamanda Adedayo developed a mild fever. Funk Adedayo felt panic claw up her throat, sharp and uncontrollable. She checked the baby again and again, convinced this was the moment everything would collapse. She used the phone. The call connected instantly. Adarinsula Balogun answered on the first ring. "You were warned not to need me so soon," she said calmly. "My baby is sick," Funk Adedayo whispered. "Please." A pause. Then footsteps echoed outside the room less than 5 minutes later. A doctor arrived. No questions. No warmth. He treated Chimamanda Adedayo efficiently and left without acknowledging Funk Adedayo at all. Afterward, Nkechi Okoro whispered the truth neither of them wanted to face. "They were already watching before you called." That night, Funk Adedayo cried. Not loudly. Not enough to draw attention. Just enough to release the pressure she could no longer carry. The cameras captured everything. The next morning, Oluyemide Okoro arrived earlier than usual. "Emotional instability has been logged," he said. Nkechi Okoro stepped forward. She cried. "That is your concern. Attachment increases unpredictability," Oluyemide Okoro replied. Funk Adedayo looked at him. "She is my child." Oluyemide Okoro nodded. "That is the problem." Later that evening, Adarinsula Balogun arrived in person. She stood quietly, watching Funk Adedayo feed Chimamanda Adedayo, observing the way her hands trembled despite her effort to stay calm. "You are deteriorating faster than expected," Adarinsula Balogun said. Funk Adedayo's voice was hoarse. "I am surviving." "No," Adarinsula Balogun replied. "You are clinging." She stepped closer, eyes on the child. "Do you know why Chimamanda Adedayo is still with you?" she asked. Funk Adedayo shook her head. "Because I wanted to see how long it would take fear to make you cooperate fully," Adarinsula Balogun said. Nkechi Okoro spoke sharply. "This is cruelty. This is assessment," Adarinsula Balogun corrected. She straightened. "You are approaching your limit, Funk Adedayo. That makes this inefficient." "What do you want?" Funk Adedayo asked. Adarinsula Balogun answered immediately. Voluntary surrender. Silence followed. Give her to me willingly, Adarinsula Balagan continued, and you will live comfortably. Resist further, and I remove her publicly and permanently. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi stepped forward. This cannot continue. Adarinsula Balagan turned to him. You are correct. She raised her hand slightly. The lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on. Heavy footsteps echoed through the house. This is the transition phase, Adarinsula Balagan said calmly. Panic erupted. Nkechi Okoro grabbed Funk Adedeo's arm. Run, they ran. Bare feet on cold floors. Chimamanda Adedeo woke screaming, her cries cutting through the chaos. Doors slammed behind them. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi blocked one hallway, buying seconds that felt like lifetimes. They reached the rear exit. The outside air hit Funk Adedeo like freedom. Then a gunshot rang out. Nkechi Okoro collapsed. Funk Adedeo screamed. Oluyemide Okoro stepped into view, weapon lowered. It ends here, he said calmly. Adarinsula Balagan appeared behind him, composed, untouched by the chaos. You see now, she said to Funk Adedeo. Fear always arrives here. Funk Adedeo backed away, clutching Chimamanda Adedeo, heart tearing itself apart. Hand her over, Adarinsula Balagan said. Funk Adedeo looked down at her child. Everything narrowed to that moment. She turned and ran toward the balcony instead. Shouts followed. She jumped. Pain exploded. Then darkness. Funk Adedeo woke to silence. Not peace. Not calm. Silence with weight. The kind that pressed against her ears and made her heart race before her eyes even opened. Her body ached everywhere. Sharp pain pulsed through her ribs and legs. But something else hurt more. Her arms were empty. The realization hit like a physical blow. Chimamanda Adedeo was gone. Funk Adedeo tried to sit up. Restraint stopped her. Panic surged instantly, wild and uncontrollable. She screamed until her throat burned, until her voice cracked into nothing. The room did not respond. White walls. Soft lighting. No windows. No sound except her breathing. Then the door opened. Adarinsula Balagan entered. She looked exactly as she always did. Calm. Controlled. Unmoved. You survived the fall, Adarinsula Balagan said. That was unexpected. Funk Adedeo strained against the restraints. Where is my child? Adarinsula Balagan stepped closer. Safe. The word meant nothing now. With you, Funk Adedeo demanded. No, Adarinsula Balagan replied. With me. Tears streamed down Funk Adedeo's face. You promised. I promised options, Adarinsula Balagan said. You chose defiance. Funk Adedeo's chest heaved. I was protecting her. You were reacting emotionally, Adarinsula Balagan replied. That is not protection. That is chaos. Funk Adedeo shook her head violently. She needs her mother. Adarinsula Balagan regarded her with something close to curiosity. Children need stability. You were never stable under pressure. Funk Adedeo's voice broke completely. Please. Adarinsula Balagan turned away slightly. Mercy was already extended. You lived. She gestured toward the wall. A screen came to life. Live footage appeared. Chimamanda Adedeo slept peacefully in a softly lit nursery. Clean. Warm. Monitored. A woman stood nearby, older, composed, watching the child with professional distance. A nanny. Funk Adedeo sobbed uncontrollably. Let me see her. Just once. Adarinsula Balagan shook her head. Attachment complicates outcomes. She stepped back. You will remain alive. Comfortable. Monitored. That is my final concession. Funk Adedeo whispered through tears. You took everything. Adarinsula Balagan met her gaze. No. I took control. The door opened again. Oluyemide Okoro entered quietly. The transfer is complete, he said. Public records have been corrected. There is no trace of the child's origin. Funk Adedeo screamed. Adarinsula Balagan did not flinch. She turned toward the door. This arrangement continues as long as you remain compliant. She paused. Fear teaches faster than pain, she added. Remember that. She left. The door sealed shut. Funk Adedeo was alone. Hours passed. Or days. Time no longer mattered. Eventually, Nurse Nkechi Okoro was allowed to see her. She walked slowly, limping slightly, eyes hollow but alive. They looked at each other and broke. Funk Adedeo collapsed into sobs. They took her. Nkechi Okoro held her carefully. I know. Dr. Samuel Adeyemi never came. Later, Funk Adedeo learned why. He had died during the chaos. An accident, they called it. Weeks passed. Funk Adedeo lived in quiet containment. A clean apartment. Enough food. Enough space. No freedom. Every night, she dreamed of Chimamanda Adebayo crying in the dark. Every morning, she woke to silence. One evening, the screen turned on without warning. Adarinsula Balagan appeared. Chimamanda Adebayo is thriving, she said calmly. Healthy. Intelligent. Calm. Funk Adebayo whispered. Does she know me? Adarinsula Balagan shook her head. She will not. Funk Adebayo closed her eyes. Then something inside her changed. Fear did not leave. It settled. And fear, when it settles, becomes something else. The screen went dark. Outside, Adarinsula Balagan stood by her vehicle. Olayamide Okoro asked quietly, "Any regrets?" Adarinsula Balagan looked ahead. Regret is a luxury for people without power. The car drove away. Somewhere far from her mother, Chimamanda Adebayo slept peacefully, unaware that her safety had been purchased with silence, control, and a fear that would never fade. And Funk Adebayo lived. Not free, not whole, but breathing, which, in Adarinsula Balagan's world, was mercy enough. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share.